Welcome, everybody, to the first Waiver Wire show of the season. Of course, the regular season doesn't start for a couple of days, but we could not be more excited to get started. It is Ethan Norof here, and we are stoked to have you with us. You can find me at Hoopball, specifically at the Hoopball Lakers website. You can find me on the podcast. Erik, before I introduce you, I want you to introduce yourself to the people. Let them know where they can find you.
All right, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Erik Ong. I'm here as the editor of Hoopball for the evening side. I cover all the post games and just the pre games as well. I've been writing about fantasy since 2006, playing the game since 2003, but have been on board with the Hoopball family for about 3 years now.
Beautiful. And Erik, can you tell the folks where you're broadcasting from live for their viewing pleasure?
All right. I'm broadcasting live from Manila, Philippines. I'm one of the few fantasy writers here in the Philippines who's actually cracked into the big league, so to speak, because I've pretty much been around and have been recognized in the industry as one of the top writers.
I love it. I love it. And, I'm coming at you live from Los Angeles, California. So we're literally worldwide, prestige worldwide, as the Step Brothers would say. And so we're here to rock it for you guys. We're stoked to be with you. Normally, this is a premium show, but tonight we're opening it up to everybody on the free side. If you would like to watch shows like these all season long, we have 6 every week. And you can go on over to hoop-ball.com, click on the premium section, and buy what floats your boat. Of course, we want you to buy it all. That's why we do it. Right, Erik?
Yeah.
There's nothing better than our content. Take our word for it, right? So, Erik, we got a lot of listener questions already. I think everybody's, sort of just salivating, ready, just foaming at the mouth, ready for this NBA season. Should we start with questions? What do you think, my man?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Let's get with some live questions in the YouTube channel.
Live questions. Love it.
Yeah. All right. This is from KJ Lee.
Okay.
Thoughts on who will be the most relevant fantasy player for the Warriors at the SF slot? Glenn Robb III, Alec Burks, or maybe one of their other rooks. He's mentioning Poole, Pascal, etc. You want to take this one?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think if you're looking for fantasy value at the Warriors small forward spot, very honestly, you're probably looking in the wrong spot. Alec Burks is a guy who everybody always likes to get excited about, and we always like to say, ooh, if Alec Burks could just stay healthy, and then he's healthy for an extended stretch, and you remember he shoots like 38% every game from the field. That gets really annoying really quickly. Volume shooter, not a volume scorer, not my preferred target. Glenn Robb III, I've been waiting for his potential to become his potential for a little while now, so I'm really not too excited there. I think when you're looking at the Warriors, you're looking at Steph Curry, obviously, Draymond Green, D'Angelo Russell, Kevon Looney, and then maybe some parts around there, but small forward isn't a place I'd be looking for value. Erik, you find any value there that I'm not seeing?
Nah, I think, Glenn Robb III is somebody I'm looking at, but only in very deep leagues. If you're playing in a league that's probably a 16-teamer or shallower, I'd stay away from him because, all this time, the guy's been a tremendous, potential guy who's never really seen that potential come to fruition throughout his entire career. So I'd move on and look elsewhere, same as you.
Exactly, man. So I think that's it for the Warriors small forward spot. What's our next question? What do we got?
Hey, guys. This is from CK. Thoughts on Davis Bertans? Is he rosterable in 12-team leagues?
Well, it's funny, Davis Bertans is actually one of those guys who I wrote down in my notes here as guys who I thought should be owned in more leagues. And I think he's a little bit of an afterthought because people don't really know what he is. And I think the Wizards right now are generally an afterthought. But I think Bertans could carve out a role in Washington. Obviously Thomas Bryant did enough there, more than enough there last season to get himself re-signed and the unquestioned starter in the middle. You got to love the rookie Hachimura at the 4. But I just don't know that Bertans is going to be a guy who's just going to be a guy. This Wizards team needs talent around Bradley Beal, and Bertans was a guy they were excited about trading for. So I think he could grow into production. What type of production? It's hard to say. I think he's a big man who can hit the 3. Top 125 value, I don't think is out of the question. But if you're looking for him to produce like top 80 value or something like that, I think that might be a little bit of a stretch until we see what kind of role is defined for him.
I agree with your take on Bertans, and I think the guy's been kind of underrated for last few seasons, mainly because he's not much of a scorer. In his last season with the Spurs, He's been known to start here and there, pop off a couple of threes here and there, but he's never really produced as far as being a scorer on a regular basis is concerned. But that said, he's also a guy who shoots well from the free throw line, does not commit a lot of turnovers, and it's that kind of stat set that will provide you value that's under the radar. So yeah, I'd say he's worth an end of bench slot at the very least in 12-team leagues.
Yeah, I think that's about right. The guy you want to take the flyer on at the end of the draft, why not? Especially if some of those other upside picks are off the board. Guy like Nikhil Walker-Alexander is one of my favorite last-round picks, but if a guy like that is off the board, Bertans makes a lot of sense in that place. We got more questions from YouTube, Erik?
Yeah, tons more.
Let's keep it going.
All right. Okay, this is from Beans, and he's interested to know why Hoopball hasn't shied away from Derek White when it looks like the rest of the fantasy pros have. The White Murray thing is interesting.
It sure is. Erik, what's your take on this one before I launch into my spiel? I'll let you go first on this one.
Well, I think there's a bit of redundancy as far as what White and Deontay Murray bring to the table. They're both defense-oriented guards. So having them, start together or, share the floor together is not very good for the Spurs as far as balancing their lineup is concerned. And that's why Bryn Forbes has been the front runner to start alongside Murray. That said, I think that White will still have some value as a guard off the bench, and it's somebody who's going to have value for deeper leagues. Obviously, Bryn Forbes is going to hurt his value a bit, taking away some minutes from him, but his stat set is always there to provide.
Yeah, and I think people got a little bit too excited about Derek White last year based on what they saw, and I think they might be expecting a little bit too much this year with DeJounte Murray back in the picture. Look, he's Derek White for me. If you're drafting in a 9-cat league, especially if it's a 12-team league, you're still talking about probably a top 100 player or so. Granted that, obviously we're going to be a little bit higher on him than most places, mostly because of the efficiency. In an 8-cat league, though, his ranking does get bumped down for me significantly, 15, 20 spots at least, only because the turnovers aren't a factor. And I think this version of the Spurs is very much one that we just don't know what it's going to be yet. We haven't seen Derek White healthy with DeJounte Murray healthy, so everybody's sort of playing a little bit of a guessing game. But if you're looking for that late round pick with upside, guys who are getting drafted in a similar spot is a guy like Davis Bertans, who I just mentioned. So I guess let's ask that question, Erik, right? If you're looking at your draft board and your choices are Derek White or Davis Bertans, which one are you taking?
I'm taking Bertans for sure.
Yeah, and I think that's where I'm at too with it. Usually point guard is one of those spots where I'm like, I want to make sure that I get the quality depth earlier. But this year, there are a lot of players who are eligible at point guard, even if they are not outright point guards, who I think I can find production from. So Bertans is a guy I would draft over him there as well. Derek White's not a guy we're taking top 50 or even top 70. But if you're talking about, 90th pick, 100th pick in the draft in a 12-team league, you're talking 8th, 9th round in some spots. And I don't think it should cost you more than that to draft Derek White. What we got next?
All right, from Charleston Chong. Chamay, Bacon, Thibault, and IT. Can you rank, please?
Sure. All right. So we got Thibault, we got IT, we got Shaman, and who's the last one?
Bacon.
So Bacon is an interesting guy. I mean, let's start with IT. IT is number one on this list for me for one reason and one reason only, and that's because of his potential to contribute. Look, I don't think John Wall is going to play this year, and even if by some miracle he does, it's not going to be until deep into the fantasy season, so we're not looking over our shoulder. The Wizards need Isaiah Thomas, and yes, Isaiah Thomas needs the Wizards, so from that perspective, it should be a good match. The thumb surgery he had in the offseason after he jammed it, bent the wrong way, looks like it's going to be a non-factor. He might miss a game or two to start the year, but when you have that kind of potential to contribute that kind of first dibs in the offense behind Bradley Beal, behind Thomas Bryant. Isaiah Thomas probably wasn't going to find the situation anywhere else. So for that reason, I like Isaiah Thomas at the top of this list just because of how much room he has to contribute. Dwayne Bacon's an interesting guy because I wonder how much Malik Monk is going to start cutting into his playing time if he shows any signs of struggle. But Dwayne Bacon is more of just a points guy for me. He's not going to do a whole lot else, at least not initially, and probably not sustainably. Landry Shamet, obviously he looked great with the Clippers last year once they acquired him from the Sixers. He's going to play a role, and I think he'll play more point guard than people think. I just don't know how much he's going to have to do offensively for this team, especially once Paul George gets onto the floor. So I could see Shamet starting better than he'll wind up being over the course of the long haul. So maybe he's an early sell high guy to try and get some value back. And then Thibault. Look, you've got Al Horford, you've got Joel Embiid, you've got Ben Simmons, you've got Josh Richardson. If those guys all stay healthy, it doesn't really matter who else is on the roster because you're going to be a fifth option at best. So Thibault's a distant 4 for me. What's your order?
All right. Before I continue, getting a message here that you should turn down your speakers because they're hearing an echo of my voice on your end.
No problem.
All right. I'm pretty much on board with most of the things you said. I still am higher on IT over the rest of these guys, mainly because of his resume and what he's been able to deliver when he's healthy. But that's been a long time ago, and I'm not quite sure if he's going to return to any semblance of his former glory. Shamet, Bacon, they're pretty much in the same tier in the sense that they're points and threes kind of guy, but for some reason, I trust Dwayne Bacon more than I trust Malik Monk. Okay. Dwayne Bacon has a little bit more defense in him, and he just strikes me as a player who has a bit of a higher IQ. Thibault, on the other hand, has been one of those hot, rookies on the preseason radar, mainly because he's been able to contribute at least one steal and one, block per game, and those counting stats, as we all know, are just catnip for fantasy heads like us.
That's what made me first fall in love with James Johnson, the 1-3, 1 steal, 1 block.
Yeah, exactly. But guys like James Johnson, his time has passed. He's gone now. So we're at that stage in the fantasy cycle where we're finding replacements for these tried and true guys like James Johnson. Now, can Thibault, provide that kind of production? Maybe. At a lower level than Johnson to start his career, maybe. But like you said, his team is loaded. But because of his defense, and we all know that coaches love defense, and he's going to get his fair share of time when he's needed to stop those, scorers on the other end of the floor.
No, I think that's fair. I mean, look, at the end of the day, I would rather spend those last few draft picks, last 2 or 3 rounds of your draft, chasing those rookies who look good or those upside players from the preseason versus those guys who are going to finish at 130. The ceiling is the floor. There's no real excitement there. You're gambling on upside in those later rounds, especially because most of those picks wind up on the waiver wire anyway. And that's why we do this show. Teams aren't teams until the end of the dance, right? We're always improving. We're always strategizing. We're always trying to rebuild. So that's why we do this show with you guys every week. And we're stoked that you're going to be here with us. What else we got?
It's not exactly a waiver wire question, but a question that's welcome nonetheless.
Sure.
KJ Lee is asking, is it crazy to go Kawhi at number 6 in a standard league instead of Jokic? I find myself being low in points per game in mock drafts whenever I go with Jokic.
No, I don't think that's crazy at all. Honestly, I like to tell people, look, if you're drafting in the first 7 picks, really, you're looking at a pretty standard group of guys, right? You're looking at AD, Giannis, Harden, Curry, Towns, Jokic, and Kawhi. That's basically how it's been shaken out in a lot of my drafts. So whether you want to draft Jokic or Kawhi, for a lot of people is a matter of preference and how they want to build their team. This year, I have no problem taking Kawhi in that spot. Eric? Are you taking Kawhi too?
No, actually, I'd still lean towards Jokic. I'm on that side of the fence that's wary of Kawhi and his notorious load management.
Sure.
But that said, on a per game basis, I have no complaints about the guy. When he plays, he's definitely up there in contention to be a top 5 fantasy guy. That's for sure. You mean, just take a rerun of the NBA Finals that just several months back. The guy's a beast if he wants to be, and I think that's the whole point. And part of the problem with him, it's the Clippers wanting to preserve that beast within Kawhi and save it for their playoffs, right? So
That's fair.
he's going to miss a few games here and there, and that's kind of scary, especially in head-to-head.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, the Clippers definitely have the depth to support him sitting out or playing fewer minutes than he might have had to on that Toronto team. But at the same time, my concern with Jokic, concern used loosely, right? I mean, the guy's a first-round pick, slam dunk. But my concern with Jokic is as this Denver team continues to have that same depth and increased talent around him, does he need to carry the same load that he's been carrying? Now, obviously, his production isn't only based in scoring, but I wonder if he's going to have a slight downtick in production because this Nuggets team is just better around him. So regardless of Kawhi or Jokic, they have concerns, they have upside. If you were to guarantee me that Kawhi and Jokic played the exact same amount of games this year, I would take Kawhi every single time.
Agreed.
So I think that's where we come from on that one. Good question. What do we got next?
All right. This one comes from Raul. Does
Okay.
Batum coming back slow down the hype train for PJ Washington? Oh, all right. I want to take this because PJ
Washington's your guy.
Yeah, man. PJ Washington is one of those rookies that, opened eyes, turned heads over the preseason. He was a guy before training camp who was actually slated to spend some time in the G League, and he impressed the coaching staff. He played well in, scrimmages. He played well in preseason. Now he's on track to possibly even starting for the Hornets. That said, obviously Batum still has something left in his tank, and I think it'll take away a bit from that hype train. But it's been very clear from the very beginning what the Hornets' game plan is for this year, and that's youth development. They've not minced words. They've told Batum and the likes of Marvin Williams that, hey, we're going with our young guys and expect a lot fewer minutes on your end. So I'm thinking that PJ Washington is somebody who I'd like to have over Nick Batum.
Yeah, I'm not relying on Nick Batum for anything except to collect checks and count his money this year, to be very honest. The Hornets would be better off without him. Batum would be better off without the Hornets. It wouldn't surprise me if ultimately it comes to a buyout, although it's hard to believe Batum's going to leave any money on the table, and the Hornets probably aren't going to give it away for free, especially after giving Terry Rozier all that money. So it's a weird situation, but if you're worried about any impact from Nick Batum, I just wouldn't be. That's like saying, hey, I'm not going to invest in Miles Bridges because I'm worried about Michael Kidd-Gilchrist. I'm not, and I don't think you should be either.
All right. Thank you for that. Next question, again from KJ Lee. What did you think about Kendrick Nunn's 40-point performance? Think he could get some spot minutes and be relevant in deep leagues or dynasty leagues?
I mean, that's a guy the Heat organization has invested in. It's great when you invest in something and it pays off and it looks like, he's really earned his way onto that roster. Would I invest in him in any fantasy league? No. Maybe a 30-team league in the 8th or 9th round, maybe. But no, I wouldn't. Eric, would you? Am I missing something here?
All right. Okay, so this is the first time we're diverging here. I'm
good. I like it that way.
I'm aggressive. I'm just a sucker for good games, and I think that Nunn is somebody who the Heat may want to develop in the future. I think that he's end of bench guy. Oh wait, hold on, Ethan. Neko still. Can you please turn down your speakers even more?
You got it.
All right, thanks. So yeah, I picked him up actually in 14 and 16 team leagues after that 40-point performance, and I'll take this just a minute or two to talk about early season strategy. If you have an end of bench guy that you're just going to drop anyway, like we said, gamble for upside. If my Nunn play does not pan out, it's okay. within the first couple of weeks, there's going to be another emergent player that I'm willing to, swap him out. But it's worth to roll the dice. But that's why leagues that have max movement limits are pretty much my bane in this game because I'm very aggressive.
Yeah, I mean, look, whether you want to pick up 10 guys or whether you want to pick up 100 guys over the course of the season, I think you should be able to construct your team as freely and as openly as possible. I mean, shout out to Sam Hinkie, shout out to Daryl Morey, shout out to anyone who uses roster manipulation to build their end product, right? I mean, that's really the name of the game here. So I'm with you on that one. And I think, look, like if you're in a 16 or 18 team league and, you drafted and then Kendrick Nunn has a 40-point game in the preseason as we're getting ready for the regular season, of course, there's going to be some excitement, but I just hesitate on chasing the points. And, it's not even like Dion Waiters' suspension is going to open up the clear path that Nunn needs. I just think the Heat are going to be deep and they're going to have a lot of ball handlers. I look at Jimmy Butler. I look at Goran Dragic. I look at Justice Winslow. I think about the role for Bam Adebayo this year. And I just don't see it coming to fruition, especially given that this Heat team has had some continuity around Jimmy Butler now for the last couple of years. I know they lost Hassan Whiteside this offseason, but nonetheless, so I think Kendrick Nunn is a guy, if you want to pick him up, sure, I guess, in a deep league, but I'm not expecting anything from him this year.
All right, thanks. All right, from CK, who would you rather have from the Raptors, OG or Norman Powell? Or are both of them must own?
Okay. Well, it's interesting. It's interesting that Fred VanVleet is not in this question because I just had a draft last week, and Fred VanVleet I had no problem taking with a late mid-round pick. I think he's going to be an undervalued player this year. I think he's going to finish nicely. And of the two names presented, honestly, I'll take OG. I think a lot of people kind of forgot the potential that he showed in his first year because he suffered that he had to have an emergency appendectomy down the stretch last year, and his role was kind of redefined with Kawhi in town. But now with Kawhi no longer around, obviously, and Pascal Siakam coming off that max extension, I think OG is one of those guys who could definitely take a step forward that some people aren't ready to see coming yet.
All right, I'll take the other side of the coin here, and I think Norman Powell is going to be the better fantasy asset. After tracking the Raptors for a while, there have been spots where they've given Anunoby, significant playing time, and he's been unable to turn his potential into actual fantasy value that's translated onto paper. He's obviously liked by the organization, but Norman Powell is somebody who's already matured, ready to rock. You can count on him for his production in threes and the occasional steals. While Anunoby, I don't know. He's in a situation where he can produce as a kind of role player on the wing for his team, but it's going to be hard, going to be living under the shadow of Pascal Siakam. And I think somebody who will be stretching the floor better, like in the case of, as your aforementioned, Fred VanVleet and Norm Powell, they're going to see more time and more opportunities because of the way the team is set up.
Yeah, I think what's interesting about Norman Powell is I think the Raptors organization is hoping for some level of what you're advocating for to come true, right? Because prior to last season, the Raptors said, oh, wow, we might have found something here. We're going to give Norm Powell, I think it was 4 years, $42 million off the top of my head. And then last year, everybody, whether you were inside that Raptors organization or rooting for the team that was on the floor, said, the Raptors gave Norman Powell how much money to do what exactly? So the Raptors are hoping that he does take that next step forward like so many were anticipating. And they do have that open two-guard spot right now. It would not surprise me if Fred VanVleet and Norman Powell actually rotated starts at that spot, at least depending upon certain matchups. But I think OG has a more defined role right now. If I'm ranking these three players in order, I would probably go Fred. I would definitely go Fred VanVleet first, and then I would probably go OG second, Norman Powell third. But part of that, very honestly, for me, is Norman Powell left a bad taste in my mouth after he failed to produce last year, and we all have those guys, right? All those players who say I'll never draft that player again, et cetera, et cetera. So I would draft OG before Norman Powell. But if you want to take a chance on Norman Powell later in your draft, of course there's a chance for him to contribute this year. I'm just not ready to say he will be fantasy relevant 100%.
Okay. KJ Lee again comes at us with another question. Do you think Kevin Huerter can hold on to his SG spot on the Hawks and maintain 25 minutes plus per game. Woo!
Yeah.
Um,
Yes. That's a short
yes,
answer for me. Yes.
yes,
Absolutely.
I do. It's just that I notice he's been a hot topic on Twitter, and I've been getting questions both on Twitter and on Facebook Messenger because there are concerns about his current injury. I think the injury itself is, something we can categorize as short term. I believe that Kevin's going to get over it. He's going to perform well. The Hawks as an organization like him a lot, and
Mhm.
it's one of their top priorities as far as development is concerned. So I wouldn't be too afraid about them limiting his minutes. Obviously, we're going to have some weird ass Vince Carter explosion for 25 points at random, and they're going to sit him, but they're going to sit Kevin, but that's going to be the exception and not the rule. If anything, Vince is going to be a very good mentor to Kevin Herter, and I'm very confident and optimistic about Kevin's future with the Hawks.
Yes, as am I, and you brought up something that I want to hit on because in this particular scenario, right, Kevin Herter is a popular name for fantasy hoop heads, but Kevin Herter is also a popular name within the Hawks organization. And a lot of times, I think what people make the mistake of, or are prone to make the mistake of, is I think that this guy should be playing more. I can see the path to his minutes. I believe in the talent. He should be playing more. I'm going to draft this player. You have to be able to read the organization as well. And in this case, because the organization is especially invested in Herter's success, you saw it as a rookie, as it went during his rookie year when they allowed him to play through mistakes, play heavy minutes, et cetera, et cetera. The only thing that I'm hesitant about right now is I never like it when a guy starts the season with a sore knee. Usually when you're a basketball player, your sore knee doesn't get less sore by playing basketball for 82 plus games over the course of the year. So with that in mind, that's why Herter's stock is sliding a little bit as we head into the regular season. But if you're able to draft him at a discount as a guy who can help you and be efficient, at least in theory, from the shooting guard spot, that's a guy I'm willing to take on my team every time.
I agree completely.
All right.
KJ Lee hits us up with another question, buddy.
KJ, we appreciate it.
Yeah. I see Kevin Love dropping at the 60 plus range in many drafts. What are both your personal thoughts on Love this year?
Yeah, look, the Cavs are a tough team to invest in, and Kevin Love is a tough player to invest in because he's had a history of injury issues, and you're not sure just what he is going to be. And the Cavs can say till the cows come home that they're not going to trade him, but it feels like a matter of time until we get our first Kevin Love trade rumor. It makes all the sense in the world to trade him. So if I can draft Kevin Love at what I see as a discount, then sure, I'm into it. Am I taking a premium pick and spending it on him? No, just too much uncertainty. And for that reason, I'm probably not going to wind up with him in any leagues.
All right. My short take is I liked Kevin Love for the last few seasons prior. He's burned me more than once. And as they say, burn me once, fool me twice. I'm done. At the 60 mark, I'd rather go with a mid-round upside player. Just for context, if they were being drafted close to each other, I'd rather put my eggs in the Marvin Bagley basket than a Kevin Love. If we're just talking about a 2010 guy, go with the younger guy and go with somebody who does not have as an extensive an injury history as Kevin Love. So personally,
and whose team should be better as well.
Exactly.
That's an interesting comp that you just brought up, Marvin Bagley versus Kevin Love. I myself would find myself on that same side of the coin right there with you with Marvin Bagley. Let me ask you this question. My question to you, Eric, right off the top of the dome, because you brought up Bagley, if it's Kevin Love or Julius Randle, what player are you drafting?
Oh my God, you had to bring up a Nick, didn't you? All right.
I had to do it to you, man. I had to.
Yeah. All right. My money's on Randle. I'm sorry. I think that Randle's breakout season last year solidified him as, in the fantasy landscape as one of those big men who who's really come into his own. I think that this season we're going to see, like I mentioned earlier, a passing of the torch kind of thing. Love was a tremendous stud back in his heyday, and it's time to switch gears, go for these younger guns who may not, on paper, have the historical pedigree that Love has, but have the potential to eventually, on a consistent level, match that kind of production.
No, I totally agree with you. And I love Julius Randle this year. I am so excited about him. And if I don't come out of any of my drafts with Julius Randle, I will be one sad panda in the process. That's where I'm at on Julius Randle.
All right. Here's an interesting question. It was posted in the forums, but he's asking it here. It's from Chong Lam. I'm picking number 1 in an 11-team Roto 9-cat league. Can you give me a reason not to draft AD?
I can give you a reason. That might not be the reason you're looking for to stop yourself from drafting him. But if I were to give you the reason, my reason would be I just simply can't take the alerts every other night. AD to the locker room with a broken fingernail. AD to the locker room because he twisted his ankle. AD to the locker room because he got to take a pee and he can't hold it. Whatever it is, it's just always Anthony Davis to the locker room. And for me, in my first round pick, my first pick in a fantasy draft, I just need less heart palpitating moments than what AD is going to provide. And keep in mind, this is coming from a Laker guy, right? I can't wait to watch Anthony Davis and LeBron James play a game in Lakers uniforms that actually means something. That is so exciting, and I will never get over the surrealness of that feeling. But that being said, if I have a choice to draft AD or draft somebody with probably more availability, a guy like Karl Anthony Towns, a guy like Giannis, a guy like James Harden, that's probably the way in which I'm leaning. If you were to guarantee me that Anthony Davis plays exactly as many games as any of those other guys, I'm going Anthony Davis every time. But I can sit here and tell you Anthony Davis will not be the most durable player in the NBA this year. I think we all know that. We have to operate with that logic. We can't operate in the what if.
All right. One important aspect of your question, Chong, is the fact that you're playing in a shallow league. 11 teams is quite shallow. And because of the shallowness of your league, you have yourself afforded a margin of error that if you actually choose any of the guys, let's say Curry, Harden, Cat, Giannis, along with AD, it's hard to say that, even if you make quote unquote the wrong decision, it's still within what I call a margin of error that you cannot overcome with your other picks in the draft this shallow. You're still dealing and owning a lot of talent that can offset any discrepancies between AD and the other top tier talent. So go with your heart, because it's in a league that shallow, make sure the rest of your team is solid. Even if you pick, let's say, Harden, Cat, or Giannis over AD, I'm sure the rest of your draft can offset it.
Absolutely agreed. And I think we also have to think about this chat is on fire right now. And I love everything about that. As a reminder to anyone who's dropping these great questions in the chat, we're also going to have the forum this year. The forum is where you can bang those questions in all day long before the football games get started, before the basketball games get started on those early Sunday afternoon games, because we'll start having those as the season progresses. So we want to remind you guys to use the forum as well. I think we got to blast through some of these chat questions so we can get to the forum questions in a few minutes. So can we do that? Is that possible?
All right. Well, we got loads of questions, and let's hammer them as fast as possible. All right. So,
all right,
is Dwight Howard worth taking a flyer on at the end of 12-team head-to-head drafts? My short answer is no. Go for somebody better in a league that shallow. I'm sure you can find somebody more reliable.
My short answer is if he is someone who can help your team. In other words, you're short on rebounds, you're short on blocks, and it's the last round or two of your draft, go for it. But if he's a guy to just be another guy on your team, look for a guy with more upside, a guy like Bruno Caboclo, 2% owned in Yahoo leagues, a guy like Nikhil Walker-Alexander, 18% owned in Yahoo leagues. How about my man Markelle Fultz, 21% owned in Yahoo leagues? Any of those three guys would present more upside to me than Dwight Howard at this stage of his career.
All right. Chung Lam comes in with another question. Who is going to end up finishing higher, Kemba Walker or Drew Holiday? 9-cat Roto.
Oof. Whew, that's tough. If Drew Holiday, I mean, look, I like Drew. If you were asking me what player would I draft before the other, I would draft Drew over Kimball Walker.
Same for me. I think Holiday will finish higher. I think that the Pelicans' pace is something that favors Holiday a lot. He's going to thrive. The support, again, the support of the organization for the player being their main man is a big aspect of how they're going to, be able to build around him. Now, Kemba is, more of a team kind of guy, and I think that he's going to be more willingly share the limelight with guys like, Jason Tatum and whatnot. So it's Holiday all the way.
Let's do it.
All right, just finished my head-to-head draft, and somehow I ended up with Drummond, Robinson, and Bryant. Lol. Who's better in the last spot? Willie Cauley-Stein, Rashawn Holmes. I have Thomas Bryant. Blah, yeah. So he's choosing between Rashawn Holmes and Willie Cauley-Stein.
I would rather have Rashawn Holmes. He can do a lot with limited playing time, and he gets those stats that fantasy owners are always after. Willie Cauley-Stein hasn't been doing much worth talking about since last season, and we didn't see him at all in the preseason. So I'm going to go with Rashawn Holmes.
I agree. The guy's always been underrated. He's not a hoop ball favorite for nothing. He does not hurt you anywhere. He does it all. It's just that for some reason teams are not giving him enough playing time, and I think he'll deliver. And Cauley-Stein has issues like free throw, lack of blocks, etc. All right, I have
and a side note to that:
yeah,
if I wound up with Drummond, Mitchell Robinson, and Thomas Bryant on the same team, I might be looking for a different position at the end of my draft than another big man. Just an idea on that one.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think your big man stats are pretty much covered with guys like that. You got your boards, your blocks, even your occasional steals from that trio right there.
100%.
All right. He has $100 in FAAB. All right, here. He's got an interesting waiver wire question. He wants to pick up Taurean Prince. He's suffering in points and threes and would like to grab him. Is it worth picking him up? And if so, how much should I spend to acquire him? All right, I'm going to take this one because Taurean Prince, I heart Taurean Prince this season. He is my poster boy for bounce back. I think that joining the Nets organization is going to turn his disappointing 2018-19, snorer around and represent Taurean Prince. I love you. That said, given $100 and your desperation need, I might go as high anywhere between $16 to $21, depending on again. Towards the middle of the season, you're not going to be spending much of that FAAB anyway. You're going to be bidding zero. But now, just to lock in that guy who I'm sure is going to flirt with top 100 value easy, yeah, I'd bring out the wallet.
Totally agree. Between 10 and 20% of the FAAB makes a lot of sense. Taurean Prince, another name I have written down on my sheet here, 48% owned in Yahoo leagues right now. Love the way he's set up in Brooklyn. Won't be asked to do too much. Skill set should be used effectively. A guy who should have been drafted. Guy you need to pick up on your roster.
All right. From CK, who would you guys rather have? PJ Washington, Terrence Ross, or Norman Powell? All are available on the waivers.
Well, Eric, I already know which player you're going to go after. Am I predicting right?
Maybe not. There's a new name on this list that we haven't mentioned, and I'm going for Terrence Ross, baby.
Yeah, I mean, look, if Terrence Ross is available on the waiver wire, I think that's the only name that really stands out there as a for sure guy who should probably be drafted. If you're asking me on my team, which one of those three would I rather have? Well, I'd rather have none of them. So that's my very honest answer. But if I'm going to have one, Terrence Ross is my guy.
All right. Okay. This again from Chong. It's a follow-up. He has a lot of follow-ups. Number 1 in 11-team Roto. You guys think I should use my second and third turns of the draft to pick the best possible players or players to balance out the team? Chong, BPA all the way in a league that shallow. It's hard to go wrong. I would adjust for balance somewhere in around round 6 because the whole concept of BPA is that the best players tend to contribute across the board and have the fewer drawbacks. That said, they're going to be chipping in various categories. It'll make it easier for you to fill out your team later on.
Talent over fit always, but especially in the first 3 rounds. Don't worry about the fit, worry about the talent. You can always figure it out from there.
Thoughts on Tim Hardaway from Jerry Leung this year? Seems like the Mavs have more depth this year on the wings and will hurt his value. I'm personally staying away from THJ. He came from a nasty leg injury. Yeah, he's recovered. But that said, I agree that the depth is going to hurt him. And I'm pretty much staying away since he's mostly a points and threes guy. So I can get that elsewhere.
I also agree. And also Dorian Finney-Smith, whether we should believe in him or not, is definitely a thing in Dallas. So I'm just out on THJ. They got Porzingis, they got Luka, too many contributions from elsewhere. THJ is not a guy I'm chasing.
All right. Here's a very cute question. AB is high on Conley. That's Aaron Brewski, obviously, for everyone. Can you tell me if you agree or not? Don't be afraid that AB is your boss. Tell the truth, lol. You want to start this one, Ethan? Oh, your thoughts on Mike Conley, please.
Sure, no problem. Look, I think Conley is a fine point guard, top 50 kind of guy. Wouldn't be a guy that I would love to have as my point guard one, but if he winds up being my point guard one, then I know I have strength in other places on the roster. I don't know exactly what he'll look like next to Donovan Mitchell, but I know he's been very consistent throughout his career. Is durability a concern? Sure, of course, especially when a player gets to this point in his career, but you can say that about almost anyone in the NBA. So for me, Conley is a guy who, if he's my second point guard, something really went right. If he's my first, something might have not have gone as well as I wanted it to. So if you're asking me if I'd have Conley in the top 50, yes, he's right around there for me. Whether he's in my top 40 is another conversation, and I don't think he cracks it quite that high for me.
All right. Conley moving to the Jazz is a two-pronged a double-edged situation as far as I'm concerned. First of all, I think that the Jazz's slower pace will negatively affect him. But on the other side of the coin, he's playing alongside Donovan Mitchell. And this is going to help preserve Conley, who, by and large, his biggest drawback in fantasy is his lack of durability. The fact that, he can count on, Mitchell to make the big plays, carry more of that scoring load, be more of a pass-first point guard. It'll do well for Conley to last longer and play more games.
That's a good point too. All right, should we kick it on over to the form questions? I know we got this thing as hopping.
all right.
Let's try to take some from the forum. So first one that we had this afternoon, this was from noon. This was, what do you guys think about Jonathan Isaac's season? What's it going to look like? Will he start super slow again, or he bust out of the gates early? What's the reasonable place to draft him? Sort of a loaded question for me. Jonathan Isaac is my Anthony Randolph. I just can't quit this guy. A reasonable place to draft him is anywhere after top 50. I think fourth round is a little bit too high, but in a competitive league, you're probably going to have to pay a greater price than you might be comfortable for. If I give him in the fifth round, I'm more than comfortable with that. Isaac is a guy who is going to have inconsistencies, and you're going to have to be along for the ride. But the thing that I like about it this year for Isaac is there's talk about Aaron Gordon and Jonathan Isaac playing the 4 and the 5 together instead of the 3 and the 4, and I think that sets up to be a much better construct for this Magic team and for both of those players, especially Isaac. Isaac is the guy who's 15 points, 7 rebounds, 2 blocks, 2 steals, maybe even a 3 in there. He is the fantasy unicorn when it all clicks together. Sorry, Chris Stapps. Someone else has to have rights to that nickname once in a while, too.
All right. When you look at fantasy, when you look at NBA players, not all of them develop at the same rates. There are players who simply explode from, when they start their careers. Some age like a fine wine, slowly but steadily. Isaac has been one of those guys who's aged slowly. We saw him, bring that potential to the forefront towards the end of the year last season after the All-Star break. And I'm going to expect to see an incremental but steady improvement off that. He's not going to be suddenly a superstar, take a huge leap. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm happy to take him in the 6th round, maybe as early as 5th, depending on my team construction earlier. And if I'm after just a glue guy from there. But the fact that the guy can give you a 1-1-1 line with maybe 6 boards, low turnovers, is obviously a treat for any fantasy team and any format.
Well said. I think you hit the nail on the head. So where are you taking him, Eric? Where are you comfortable drafting Jonathan Isaac?
Somewhere between the 5th and 6th rounds.
All right, so it sounds like we agree on that. Anywhere from about 50 to 60 guys. We got another question from the forum. This one is about Mitchell Robinson. So not a waiver question because obviously Mitch Rob is going high in drafts. I've tried to trade him in a dynasty league to every team, but no bites. Don't want to sell too low as preseason scared me. There's so many guys in New York. Thanks, guys. You're right. New York decided to sign 1,400 power forwards and centers this offseason. You know, it's a heck of a plan when you swing and miss on Kevin Durant because you never had a chance anyway. But that's a story for a different day. Look, if you have Mitch Rob in a dynasty league, you're holding on to him because, like you said, you don't want to sell too low right now. Preseason has some people feeling some type of way, and there's going to be some bumps in the road. But the first time Mitchell Robinson blocks 5 shots in 7 minutes, you're going to remember why you paid a premium for him. Eric, am I speaking crazy, or are you with me on this?
I think that his floor is a super-powered Theo Ratliff, and that scares me if you're spending a 2nd-round pick on that. Ceiling-wise, it's kind of uncharted for me, but clearly there are roadblocks in the form of all these big men that you are decided to, accumulate. So that said, I'm more on the pessimistic side. I don't think we're going to see him blow up. Obviously, he was a stud post All-Star break. I think that he can build on that, but I think that the amount he can build off that will be limited, because of the logjam.
Yeah, I think so too. And to be clear, I wouldn't be spending a 3rd-round pick or a 2nd-round pick on him, by any means. But I would think that it's going to cost you a 3rd-round pick at minimum to draft Mitchell Robinson. So again, probably not a guy who's going to wind up on my teams this season as a result. Now we do have a waiver wire question. All right, that's why we do this 9-cat head-to-head points league. 9-cat head-to-head points league. I think somebody might be confused. So I'm going to operate with the assumption that this is a 9-cat head-to-head league. Nicholas Batum, Marquise Chris, Christian Wood, Nico Melli, or Daniel House. Who is the best waiver wire pickup, Eric?
9-cat head-to-head, I'd say House. He's underrated.
House?
He doesn't do a lot as far as scoring is concerned, but he is very good with the counting stats in those peripheral categories and does not commit a lot of turnovers. Gerald Green is, pretty much done for the season, and Mike D'Antoni likes to keep a tight rotation. And I think that the Rockets' commitment to House pretty much assures that he's going to get a lot of floor time.
You make some good points, man. I think House is one of those guys who's probably underrated, definitely underrated in fantasy right now. Not a high upside guy, but definitely can provide you some consistency. Part of me wants to say Marquise Chris, but with Kevon Looney getting healthy, with Amari Spellman getting back on the floor, I don't think the same role is going to be there that Marquise Chris saw in the preseason. That's what got him onto this roster. But I really want to say Christian Wood is the answer to this question. So not if, but when Blake Griffin misses some time and Christian Wood is unleashed, he will be the most popular pickup in fantasy basketball. Mark my words. Not 9-cat Roto League, the AB 150. That's the Brewski 150. Make sure if you're drafting without the Brewski 150, you're doing yourself a disservice. Brewski 150 has Kemba and Conley comparable. Should I pick Conley before Drew? CP3, Westbrook for point guard. I mean, it's your team. Pick the player that you want. I know that's not everybody's favorite advice, but sometimes we sit here and give you advice and you still make the same pick that you were going to make beforehand anyway. If you were asking me which players I would take on my team, I would take Drew first from that list. I would take Conley second because I don't want any part of CP3 or Westbrook on my teams this year. Eric, where are you at?
I just echo whatever you said. That's the exact order I would prioritize those players.
All right, sounds good. We got another John Isaac question with some comedy thrown in there. Man, I think I picked up and dropped John Isaac to the waiver wire last year at least 6 times, waiting for him to go off. I think we all did, right? I think we will start off okay, but won't explode like owners would like him to. Even though he will have the opportunity to post big numbers, it will take bit until he gets his groove. I would take him in the 6th or 7th round. Okay, it's not really a question. So we already said 5th or 6th round is where we take him. Probably a little too late. Maybe that's a more of a rookie or a novice league. In a points league, who is the better option to keep, DeLon Wright, or should I try to trade for Jarrett Culver? Well, I would try to trade for Jarrett Culver. What would you do?
Wow. All right. So as you know, a lot of experts aren't as high on rookies, like Dan, especially. He's not fond of the young guns, but um, I'm convinced with the team's commitment for the development of Culver. I think that he's a sneaky post All Star break explosion candidate. He's somebody who's got a lot of upside, and he will check a lot of those boxes as far as delivering those, categories that you want in points league. So I'd consider him. I'm kind of a bit worried about DeLon Wright. I'm worried that
Me too, man.
The Luka effect, Luka just needs the ball, and Luka's going to be distributing the ball. And DeLon Wright's explosion, and we're feeling residue rankings based off his post All Star break explosion, was simply the perfect storm. He was traded to the Grizzlies, who were lacking for talent. They were sitting Mike Conley, and of course, the guy had triple double for a whole week. Well, who's not gonna, you're gonna forget.
I was really hoping that DeLon Wright was going to stay in Memphis because that was going to be one of my favorite fantasy players had that happen. And the fit in Dallas makes sense from an actual basketball and reality perspective. It makes sense. But I totally agree with what you just said. I think Luka needs the ball. You got a healthy Porzingis. They've got too many cooks in the kitchen between those two guys and needing the ball. DeLon Wright is probably going to be one of those guys who scores 3 or 4 points, grabs a handful of rebound, 3 or 4 assists, maybe a steal. Does a lot across the stat sheet, but not enough in any particular category or in combination with everything to make a meaningful contribution. So that's where I'm at on DeLon. I think Jarrett Culver's our play there. We got another question from EXT8. I drafted Sabonis without knowing about the trade possibility. Would you drop already or hold? First of all, I would not drop him no matter what. Second of all, what I would say to this trade possibility is I think it was really overstated that it's a trade possibility. The reality is Domantas Sabonis and the Pacers probably aren't going to agree to an extension. So yes, the Pacers are going to float out to the media, in this case, Sam Amick of The Athletic. Hey, we're going to put Sabonis on the market and let's see what we can find. His contract makes it exceptionally difficult for the Pacers to pull off a trade without taking back money that they wouldn't want, and they don't have a lot of money that they can just send out as dead money on their roster currently with where they're at. So I don't expect Sabonis to be traded either, at least not right now, maybe closer to the trade deadline if it comes to fruition that there is not an extension in place, but I would not be worrying about Sabonis with or without trade possibility right now. Eric, are you worried or are you just holding the course?
I'm not worried at all. I'm holding on to him, if only for the honor of his dad. Kids, you love Jokic, but before Jokic, there was Sabonis' dad. So, but seriously, Domantas is coming into his own. He still has not yet reached his ceiling. If we're just looking at the pedigree of what his dad was as one of the original high rebounding, talented passing big men of in NBA history, his kid has the potential to do that. Maybe not at the current, tier that Nikola Jokic brings to the table, but who's not going to argue with a poor man's Jokic at the positions you're getting Sabonis anyway? So yeah, I'm holding him onto him for sure.
Perfect. I think we got time for at least a couple more questions here. So let's pull a couple more off the form here. In a points league, PJ Washington or Nickeil Alexander-Walker. Charlotte team is weak and PJ will have more opportunity. Thanks. Nickeil Alexander-Walker, I want him on every fantasy team that I own this year. I want him on every roster, and I can't wait for him to explode and for me to say I told you so. That's one of my favorite players of this rookie class. It's not close. If you watched anything from Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's rookie season last year, you know that basketball runs in this family, and I'm not sitting here telling you that Nickeil Alexander-Walker is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, but I can tell you that both of them have last names that wrap around their numbers, and that's certainly a good start. Erik, where are you at?
I like Nickeil Alexander-Walker over Lonzo Ball. I think deep inside.
Oh, okay. There you go. That's the way to drop the bomb, Erik. There you go.
All right. You want hot takes, baby? If I were going to build my own NBA franchise, I would choose Nickeil Alexander-Walker over Lonzo Ball. It's just a travesty from a fantasy standpoint that he went to the Pelicans, and on almost any other NBA team, he's going to have a far larger role and a far bigger impact in fantasy. Obviously, the Pelicans want to see what they can get out of Lonzo. He is a talented guy, obviously, with that Jason Kidd stat set mold. But as far as being a well-rounded guard, albeit undersized, is the way to go as far as I'm concerned.
All right, so say on the same topic, in a points league, rank for the season: DeLon Wright, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Jarrett Culver, and PJ Washington. Those are 4 guys we've talked a lot about tonight. Those 4 guys, where are you ranking them? How are you ranking them?
All right, sorry. I'm sorry. I was just you cut off for a bit. Could you repeat?
No worries. So for a points league for the rest of the season for rankings, we got 4 guys we've talked a lot about: DeLon Wright, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, PJ Washington, and Jarrett Culver. How would you rank those 4 guys in a points league for the rest of the season?
Whoa. Overall, not just for the short term, I'd go Culver first, Nickeil next, Washington third, and last with DeLon Wright. Sorry.
Yeah, and I think I'd rank it Nickeil Alexander-Walker 1 because I'm that high on the dude. Culver 2, but then Washington and DeLon Wright to finish it out as well. So that concludes our form questions that are specifically waiver wire related. We've been here for about an hour, so every week we're going to do this for anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour. It's really dependent on what you guys need from us, but we're going to carve out the full hour just to make sure that we have enough time for you guys. Do we have any final questions that we want to make sure that we get to? I see one Deep League Dynasty question here that I think we can get to. We can show it up on the screen. Deep League Dynasty question: who has the highest 9-cat value with these Lakers players, KCP, Rondo, or Caruso? Well, I'll tell you this much. It's definitely not Rondo in a dynasty league if you're looking for the future. And KCP kind of is what he is at this stage of his career. So if you're looking for the dynasty factor, I'm going with Alex Caruso just because of where he is in his career versus those other 2. But none of these 3 players are entirely too exciting to me right now, especially because it looks like Avery Bradley and Rajon Rondo are going to get a lot of minutes at point guard, and Quinn Cook deserves to play, so Alex Caruso might get squeezed a little bit here to start the year at least. Erik, what do you think?
Deep League Dynasty, I'd go with Caruso. Overall, you might see a little bit of a shakeup from that Lakers roster coming into next season. And I think that Caruso is somebody who has a long-term future with the franchise. He's going to be talent on the cheap as far as they're concerned. And I think it might not be as much of an impact now, but in the long term, he's the better guy to own.
All right, so you heard it from us, and I think that's going to wrap up tonight's episode. The inaugural of the 2019-20 NBA season and the Hoop Ball campaign. Could not be more excited to spend this time with you guys. Reminder, if you want access to this show moving forward and any other of our 6 live shows every week, got to head over to hoop-ball.com, click the login, get yourself on your hands on those premium products because you already know we're going to be coming with the fire takes all season long. Erik, can you tell the people where they can find you on Twitter so they can make sure not to miss anything from you?
All right, guys. If you have any more questions that we didn't cover, I know there were a lot. Sorry that we couldn't get to all of them, but feel free to hit me up. I'm at Fantasy Hoopla. That's HOOPLA. Just give me a follow, DM me. Just add me, and I'll get to your fantasy questions for sure.
I think we can all appreciate that. You can find me on Twitter at Ethan_Norof, Norof. I know it sounds like it has 2 F's, but it's only 1. You can ask me any questions you want. I can't promise you I'll get back to you during the day. I am a teacher after all, but eventually I will get you those answers. Make sure you check your DMs if you're tweeting me directly as well. Sometimes I shoot them in the messages. Sometimes I'll reply right back to you. So for Erik, I'm Ethan. We appreciate you guys. Until next week, thanks for hanging out with us. See you then.